Hello, and welcome back to the podcast where you are invited for lighthearted conversations about things that matter as you seek to live your most meaningful, beautiful, and joyful life. I'm your host, Dr. Edie Wadsworth, and I hope you enjoy your stay here at the House of Joy. Well, hello, dear one. Welcome back to the podcast. This is episode 184. We are still in our series on unlocking emotional freedom. I hope you're loving it. I hope you're sharing it with your friends. We've gotten so much good feedback from it. This is actually basically the outline for a book I'm working on. I don't think emotional freedom is going to be the title, but that's going to be the subject matter. So I'm really excited about it. Today we're talking about changing your emotional state by processing emotions. I have been reading a zillion books on emotions in the past 6 months, or probably even longer than that. But several things that I read this weekend confirmed what I already believe and know, and it's some form of this statement: change your emotional state, change your life. Change your emotional state, change your destiny, if you like that word better. I 100% believe this is true. And I have watched it happen in my own life. And I just finished up a workshop called The Art of Living Well, where we talked about the emotional state of like chronic stress, chronic overwhelm, fight or flight, like living in that. And when we are living in, I believe there are basically two main emotional states, which are your sympathetic nervous system regulates sort of the fight or flight when you're really, really activated. And the other emotional state, which is your parasympathetic nervous system, which regulates everything else: your digestion, your reproduction, your creativity. This is like your rest and digest system, they call it. And so those two systems are governed by two main emotions: fear or love. And so what I often like to ask myself is, am I operating in fear or love? Am I activated? And am I operating from a place of being worried and activated and anxious? Or am I working from a place of being restful and grateful and joyful and creative? Now, the truth of the matter is, your body way prefers to operate in the parasympathetic or the rest creative mode of being. It's very healing to your body. I'm so thankful we have the other system, the fight or flight, the activation system, because we need that one when we need to operate fast and get out of an emergency or whatever. But what has happened for a lot of us is that we are operating in that fight or flight system most of the time. And it's not good for our bodies. It's actually it weakens our immune system. It weakens our bodies. It causes dis-ease. And so I have actively been working for the last couple of years to retrain my body to not operate in that system and to operate from a place of love, joy, rest, gratitude. So ask yourself, which of those systems do you spend the most time in? I also want to explore today processing emotions and how one of the ways out of that sort of chronic fight or flight is when we learn to process emotions. So we're basically mainly going to be talking about that today. I'm going to start with a quote from Frederick Buechner, one of my favorite writers. He says, I can't remember which book this is in. I love him. I've read, I think, all his books. He says, listen to your life. See it for the fathomless mystery it is, in the boredom and pain of it, no less than in the excitement and gladness. Touch, taste, smell your way to the holy and hidden heart of it, because in the last analysis, all moments are key moments, and life itself is grace. And what I love about that quote is that it really paints this picture of life being this expanse of emotions. And the ironic thing is, we don't love negative emotions, but we become addicted to them. It becomes our way of being. It becomes kind of like our personality. I'm just anxious. I'm just sad. I'm just easily frustrated. I'm an angry person. We sort of identify with these main emotional states and become addicted to them. And then we've talked about this on a previous podcast. Our body goes to work to feed us stories of why we still feel this way. Well, now I'm frustrated because of her, and now I'm mad because of this. But really, what has happened is we've become addicted to this emotional state, and changing your life is really as simple as changing your emotional state. And it's doable, but it's like changing any habit. It's something that you really have to practice. You have to rewire your brain toward this new emotional state that you want to live in. And one of the ways that you can get there is to really learn how to process your emotions. So, um, emotions really are sort of the language of the body, and we often are holding emotions in our body. We often are suppressing emotions in our body. We're often reacting to emotions, but we're not very often allowing and processing the emotions. And when we learn how to do this, this will be game changing. Um, the thing that your body is often doing, your body, especially when something has happened to you that has a really significant emotional charge, your body records a memory of that, and then it likes to replay that over and over again. So getting out of that is like breaking an addiction to someone that you've become. And I think one of the things that is really interesting to me is that when you finally break out of it, you realize that you have traded so much of your life, so much time, so much of your days, um, kind of betraying yourself to this emotional state that you think now is just who you are, is just your personality, and it's not. And these emotions become like a chemical um, cocktail that sort of keeps reminding us of the past, and then we just keep recreating the past. So the emotional state that you want to be in, which I'm guessing for most of us is something like love, excitement for life, joy, gratitude, feeling super passionate and alive. I'm guessing that that's where most of us want to go. If that's what we want to create, then sometimes I think what we're doing is we're waiting for a circumstance in our lives to go, well, if this happens, then I would feel that way. And really, the opposite is true. No, begin to feel that way, and then those things will come about. That's kind of where the statement, change your emotional state, change your life, comes from. And it's so, so true. I think part of what you have to do is you have to wake up to what is happening. You have to wake up to the emotional state that you're in, and be willing to say, like, okay, I don't want to react to this emotion. I don't want to suppress it. I don't want to avoid it anymore. I want to open myself up to it, welcome it, process it so that it can move through me. Emotions are like waves, and they're meant to just be felt and processed and not held on to and not reacted to. And when we learn how to do this, we get so much healthier on the inside. Like, our bodies respond to this so much better. We start healing in ways that are profound, but also we just enjoy our experience of life so much more. We just feel more relaxed. We feel more at home in our bodies. We feel um, a lot less restless, and it can have just a profound effect on how you experience your life every day. And so you have to make up your mind, like, do I want this, and am I willing to do the practice that it requires to do it? And I hope you say a hearty yes to that, because it's really important. It's important for your physical health. It's important for your mental and emotional health. It's important for your relationships. It's important for everything that you learn how to do this. So decide that, okay, I'm tired of living the way I've been living, stuck in emotional patterns that aren't serving me, that don't have me showing up as my highest self. We're doing something in Life Mentoring School this month, which I'm so excited about, which is it's called Reset Reinvention, where we are like, how do I get back to my favorite version of me? Like, what is that version of you, that highest self version of you? And how can you begin living into that and showing up like that? And it's going to require that you break the addiction to those negative emotions that you have become so accustomed to in the past. It's kind of like, it'll feel a little bit like a death, actually, because it's the death of an old way of being. And one of the entryways into that is to process emotion. And because emotions are the language of the body, the processing of emotions is very physical. And there's lots of, research on this, and lots of different people who talk about this. But I'm going to give you my favorite ways to process emotions, and you can just start practicing some of them. I think, honestly, just becoming aware that we need to process them, aware that they're there, aware enough that we can name them. Oh, I'm feeling worried right now. Let me open up to that, breathe into that. Let me go for a walk. I'm always trying to think of some physical way that I can help my body process the emotion. So, of course, the first way, which is my favorite way, is movement of some kind. So, I'm getting ready to go to the gym. There is no better way for me to process the frustration and the anger and just the emotions that come up from life, you guys, than lifting heavy weights, sweating, going for a run. Going to the gym for me is a daily way that I process emotion. And I go into it like thinking of that. Like, what do I need to work through? I think of sometimes like processing emotions, like processing your life, almost like digestion. Like, can I digest the food that I've taken in? Can I recognize, okay, here's the food, if you were your intestines and you're like digesting it. But I feel like emotions are like digesting your life, like processing what you're feeling, what you went through or whatever. And this is like the first step to the second part, which we'll talk about next week, which is really creating emotion. Okay, now that I've learned how to process emotion, what emotions do I want to create? What emotional state do I want to create? So movement is huge. Dance, you guys, dance it out. I'm obsessed with dancing. I'm a terrible dancer too, but I love line dancing. You can ask my kids, I'm always putting on some music. Hey, let's do a line dance. I love dancing. I think dancing is such a great way to process emotion. I mean, I put on my outline today pickleball, y'all. I mean, can we just go ahead and agree that that's a great way to process emotion? I am loving pickleball this spring. It's been so fun to learn and practice. So, what ways for movement would you like? Now, probably my favorite way to move and process emotion is walking. So, I love doing emotion walks. I love doing dream walks too, where I'm just like dreaming about what I could create and how my life could be, like all of those things. But I also love, I did this weekend actually, is I just went for a walk to process emotion. And I just walked, take some deep breaths, think about the thing that I need to process through, ask where is it in my body? Like, what is this emotion that I'm feeling? Does it feel tight? Does it feel small? Is it taking over my body? Does it have a temperature to it? And sometimes when I'm asking myself all those questions, that takes me out of the processing. So then I have to bring it back to my body. Like, okay, let's breathe through it. Let's let it pass. And I just almost visualize that emotion being like a wave that kind of passes through me. So walking, great way to do it. Second way I love is journaling. I did this weekend too. I did some journaling on a negative emotion that I was feeling after I went for my walk. I was kind of still hanging on to it a little bit. Emotions are like that. They pretend to be like, those negative emotions are like, no, you should hang on to me. No, you should still be frustrated. No, you should still be worried. And I was like, oh, this one is liking to hang on. A lot of times when I'm writing, I will ask myself questions like, okay, what is the wisdom of this emotion? What is it trying to tell me? How is it trying to get my attention? If this were like a message from someone that loves me, what would the message be? So I'm often, when I'm journaling, kind of asking myself questions about the emotion. But I think this can be a really helpful way to do it too. I love when I'm journaling about emotions to also do a lot of good breathing. Third way I love is music. So, oh my goodness, you guys, let's just don't even go down the road of Post Malone and all the country music that he's covering right now. But I love turning the music up in my car, singing full voice. I'm glad you don't have to be there for this. You're welcome. That's not what I do on my podcast. But I love processing emotion with music. It's such a great way to help bring up the emotion that you've been maybe suppressing or reacting to and helping yourself process that. The next one is breathing. And I talked about that in a couple different ways, but there's lots of different methods online for breathing. One of the things that my doctor had me doing last year, I have a functional medicine doctor who's awesome. And I was dealing with some sinus and bronchitis stuff, and she had me doing Kundalini breathing, which was really helpful. box breathing. There's lots of different breathing methods, but even just being aware of your breath and taking good deep breaths. When we get in emotional states that are negative emotions, we tend to breathe really shallow. So just reminding yourself to take deep breaths is good enough. Next one, talk therapy or coaching. Great way to process emotion. My life coach, Meg Ladd, is so good at this. She is always kind of honing in on what emotion I have, and then we'll go down like a whole exercise of really exploring that emotion, processing that emotion. And we talked about this in another episode, but one of the things that helps you really make peace with your emotions, especially negative ones, is to kind of use that of course statement. Like, of course you feel angry. Of course you are frustrated. Of course you're worried, and giving yourself a lot of love and compassion around that emotion. And it helps you move past it. The next one is like any kind of, now I don't do this a ton, but like, well, I do part of this because my next one is like an outlet for the emotion. Like if you need to cry, if you need to punch a bag, if you need to scream. I don't do the screaming thing, but I am a crier. And you know how often we're trying to like hold in that emotion? And I'm not very good at holding that kind of emotion in anyways. I easily cry, but I don't try to hold it in. So when I feel tears come on, I just let them out. Yesterday, we were at church, and this happens to me every so often at church. You guys, we go to First Lutheran in Knoxville. We have the most amazing pastors, and not interim, but we had one of the pastors that was filling in yesterday for our main pastor, and he's an older gentleman. I love him so much. He was our interim pastor for a couple of years, and when he gave me my communion yesterday, he said my name, and I just started crying. I'm like there's something about it. Like, this is Christ's body for you, Edie. And I was like, I don't know. What is it about that? But tears just came. And then I went back to my seat, and there's this little prayer that we read after we take communion. And I read the prayer, and I was still crying, just tears easily flowing. And I'm so thankful for the times when I can allow myself to be that present and that aware of like what's going on for me. I just felt so thankful for faithful pastors, so thankful for my church, so thankful for Christ and his body and blood and his forgiveness and just all of that. I was just so thankful. So let those tears out. If you need a punching bag, get yourself a punching bag. Next one is redirection or distraction. Now, I only say this because we don't want to do this too often to distract ourselves from emotion, but sometimes we're in a situation where we need to process an emotion, but it's just not the right time. And I think it can be helpful in those situations to kind of redirect for a period. We often do this with kids, like they're having some issue with something and we can just redirect them. Sometimes that works actually to process the emotion. You don't want to do that as an adult, I don't think, too much, because it can take you out of being with the emotion. But I mention that because that could be something that you do. The next way is prayer and meditation. This is huge for me. I love this as a way I actually am going to talk about this next week more, but as a way to get me into a different emotional state and get me into a state of just gratitude and seeing my life and the world the way I want to. And I think that can be really powerful. Again, we'll talk about that more next week. But I say all of these ways of processing emotion because you don't want to keep looking for something in your life to change in order for your emotional state to change. You have control over that. Once you start allowing emotions and processing emotions, and the next week we'll talk about generating and creating emotions, you can change your whole life by that. And then things will start to change around you because it will reflect how you are being in the world. It will reflect the energy that you're putting into things. So condition yourself to the new emotion that you want to create, and everything in your life will change. So I think that's all I have for today. I'm so excited for next week, you guys. Next week may be the most powerful lesson in this whole series on creating the emotional state that you really want to create a new future, to create the life that you want to create, and starting that with the emotional state that you want to be in when you do create that life. So I can't wait to see you next week. I love you. Have a great day. Thanks for listening to the podcast, and I will see you soon.